Here's something that should stop you cold. The American Heart Association quietly released data showing that the majority of sudden cardiac deaths, the ones nobody saw coming, the ones where a perfectly healthy person just doesn't wake up, happen between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. Not during a run, not during an argument, not shoveling snow in February, in bed, asleep, in the safest place you think you have. And the reason, in most of those cases, wasn't a hidden disease. It wasn't bad genetics. It wasn't even bad luck. It was something they did every single night. Something so normal, so routine, so completely unremarkable that their family didn't even think to mention it to the doctor afterward. I'm going to tell you what that is. But first, I need to ask you something. How confident are you right now that your bedtime routine is safe? Hold that answer, because by the time we're done here, it's going to look very different. Look, I get it. Sleep feels like the one thing you're doing right. You're not smoking. Maybe you quit drinking soda. You walk when you can. You feel like, okay, whatever else is going on, at least when I lay down at night, my body is getting what it needs. My heart is resting. My blood pressure is dropping. Everything is hitting pause. That's what we've all been told, right? Sleep is healing. Sleep is when your body repairs itself. 7 to 8 hours, and you're doing better than most Americans. You wake up, feel a little groggy maybe, but you chalk that up to just life, stress, getting older. And honestly, that story is so comforting. It's the one thing that lets you close your eyes without guilt. I believed it too. And I'm not here to scare you for the sake of it. I genuinely, and I want you to hear this, I genuinely wish none of what I'm about to tell you was true, because some of it kept me up at night, ironically. But here's the thing about comfortable stories. So they're only useful if they're actually true. And the truth about what happens to your heart between the hours of 10 at night and 6 in the morning in a typical American home on a typical American night is something that took me a long time to sit with. So let's go through it, myth by myth, and I'll be honest with you the whole way. Myth number 1, if I'm sleeping, my heart is resting. This is probably the most widespread belief in the whole conversation around sleep and heart health. And it makes complete intuitive sense. You're horizontal. You're not moving. Your breathing slows down. Surely your heart is just coasting, right? Taking a break. Here's what's actually happening. Your heart never fully rests, not once in your entire life. But during sleep, specifically during certain stages of sleep, your cardiovascular system goes through enormous shifts. Blood pressure fluctuates. Your autonomic nervous system, the part of your body that runs on autopilot, is actually extremely active. And if anything disrupts those cycles, anything at all, your heart doesn't coast. It spikes. There's a window, and cardiologists have a name for it called the morning surge. It happens in the hours just before and after waking. Blood pressure can jump dramatically, and in people who have any underlying arterial stiffness, any plaque buildup, any uncontrolled hypertension, that surge is when the rupture happens. That's when the clot breaks loose. That's when the stroke hits. You don't feel it coming. There's no warning shot. You just don't wake up, or you wake up and something is very wrong. Now, here's where it gets personal. I want to tell you about a man I'll call David. He was 54, lived outside of Columbus, Ohio, coached his grandson's little league on weekends. His wife described him as the healthiest seeming sick person she'd ever known, which is her way of saying he looked fine, felt fine, acted fine. David had high blood pressure, diagnosed 6 years before he died. He was on medication, but he'd gotten casual about it. Skipped doses, figured he felt okay, so the numbers were probably okay. Every night, David watched TV in bed until about 12:30, had a small bowl of chips or crackers, just a snack, nothing crazy. Fell asleep with the TV on, woke up most mornings a little stiff, a little groggy, but he was 54, so one Wednesday morning, his wife reached over and he was gone. The autopsy found a ruptured arterial plaque. His blood pressure, according to the cardiologist who reviewed his case, had almost certainly surged in that early morning window. And the plaque, which had been building quietly for years, couldn't hold. His wife told a reporter he thought sleeping was the safe part of the day. It doesn't have to be dramatic to be dangerous. That's the whole point of this myth. The danger isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It just accumulates night after night in a body that everyone, including the person inside it, assumed was resting. Myth number 2, a glass of wine before bed helps my heart and helps me sleep. Oh, this one is so deeply embedded in American culture that I almost feel bad dismantling it. Almost. You've heard it your whole life. Red wine, antioxidants, the French paradox, a little something to take the edge off. And yeah, there was a season in health journalism where moderate red wine consumption was practically a prescription. Doctors on morning talk shows, magazine covers. The heart-healthy glass of wine, the science has moved significantly. We now know that alcohol, any amount of alcohol, disrupts something called sleep architecture. That's the technical term for the structure of your sleep cycles. When you drink before bed, you fall asleep faster. That part is real, and that's why it feels like it's working. But what happens next is the problem. Alcohol suppresses REM sleep, the deep restorative stage. It causes your body to metabolize the alcohol in the back half of the night, which triggers a rebound effect. Your nervous system, which was artificially sedated, snaps back. Your heart rate goes up. Your blood pressure, which should be at its lowest point between 2 and 4 a.m., instead elevates. Some studies have found that even 1 to 2 drinks in the evening can cause measurable blood pressure increases in the early morning hours. And for people who already have cardiovascular risk factors, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, family history, pre-diabetes, that nightly rebound is not harmless. It's a nightly stressor on an already stressed system. There's a cardiologist at a major research hospital, I'm paraphrasing her here, who said something that stuck with me. She said, "We used to think moderate alcohol was neutral for the heart at worst. We now believe there is no truly safe amount for someone with existing cardiovascular risk. And the problem is, most Americans don't know they have existing risk." Read that again. Most Americans don't know they have existing risk. So you pour your glass of Cabernet, you settle into the couch, you tell yourself this is self-care. And meanwhile, your arteries, which have been quietly dealing with elevated cholesterol or years of blood pressure that runs just a little high or inflammation from diet, are getting hit with another disrupted night. The wine isn't helping you sleep, it's changing what sleep does to your heart, and not in the direction you think. Myth number 3, snoring is just snoring. My husband's been doing it for 20 years, he's fine. He's not fine. I'm sorry, I know that's hard to hear, but he's not fine. And the fact that he's still alive is not evidence that the snoring is harmless. Sleep apnea, which is what chronic loud snoring usually signals, affects an estimated 30 million Americans, and the majority of them are undiagnosed. They've never had a sleep study. Nobody has ever put a name to what's happening. Here's what sleep apnea actually is, stripped of the clinical language. Your airway partially or fully collapses during sleep. Your breathing stops, sometimes for 10 seconds, sometimes for a minute. Your brain detects the oxygen drop, panics, and jolts your body just enough to restart breathing. You don't fully wake up. You have no memory of it happening, but your body goes through this cycle, and sometimes hundreds of times a night. Every single one of those micro-arousals triggers a stress response. Cortisol, adrenaline, blood pressure spike, heart rate jump, hundreds of times per night for 20 years. And then we act surprised when the heart gives out. Sleep apnea is one of the strongest independent risk factors for hypertension, heart attack, stroke, and atrial fibrillation. That's the irregular heartbeat that causes blood clots to form and travel to the brain. Cardiologists have known this for years, but because snoring is so normalized, because we joke about it, because the person doing it doesn't experience it consciously, families spend decades dismissing it. There was a woman, I'll call her Margaret, 61 years old, retired teacher from outside of Nashville. Her husband had snored since their first night together in 1987. She'd gotten so used to it she could sleep through it. Their adult kids teased their dad about it at Christmas. It was a family joke. He had a stroke at 62, left side weakness, partial speech impairment. When the neurologist asked about his sleep history, Margaret mentioned the snoring almost as an afterthought. The doctor ordered a sleep study immediately. Severe obstructive sleep apnea. AHI, that's the number of breathing interruptions per hour, of 47. Anything above 30 is considered severe, 47 times an hour, for over 3 decades. The doctor told Margaret, as gently as he could, that the stroke was almost certainly connected, that the decades of nightly oxygen drops and blood pressure spikes had done cumulative damage to the blood vessels in her husband's brain. She said the hardest part was knowing they could have caught it, that a sleep study, a CPAP machine, a simple intervention might have changed everything. If someone in your house snores seriously loudly with gasping or pauses, please hear me on this. That is not a personality quirk. That is a medical situation. Get a sleep study. It's not dramatic. It's not overreacting. It's the thing that might keep them alive. Myth number 4, I scroll my phone for a bit to wind down. It helps me decompress. I see you. I've been you. 11:30 at night, phone in hand, one more reel, one more article. Just give me 15 more minutes of being a human being before I have to be unconscious. But here's what's actually happening in your body during that wind down scroll. Blue light from your screen suppresses melatonin. You've probably heard that. But the melatonin piece is actually the least of the problems. What the scrolling does, the actual act of consuming reactive content, news, social media, comment sections, even mindless entertainment, is keep your cortisol elevated. Cortisol is your stress hormone. It's supposed to drop in the evening. Naturally, if you do nothing, your cortisol follows a curve. High in the morning to get you moving, gradually declining through the day, low by night to let your cardiovascular system settle into that restful blood pressure dip. Scrolling short circuits that curve. Your brain doesn't distinguish between I'm watching a funny video and I'm emotionally engaged with stimulating content. It just knows inputs are coming in, stay alert, and it holds cortisol up, which holds blood pressure up, which means when you finally put the phone down and close your eyes, your cardiovascular system is not where it should be at that hour. And here's what makes this especially sneaky. You feel relaxed. You feel like you decompressed because you disengaged from your actual life and its actual stressors, but your physiology didn't get the memo. Your heart is still running at a pace that belongs in the afternoon, not midnight. For people with existing hypertension, and the CDC estimates nearly half of American adults have it, including millions who don't know, that extra hour of elevated cortisol before bed is not neutral. Multiplied by 365 nights, multiplied by years. The fix, by the way, is almost insultingly simple. Not no screens ever, just a 30-minute buffer. Put the phone across the room. Not on the nightstand, across the room. Read something physical or just sit in low light and let your brain remember what boredom feels like. Your blood pressure will start doing exactly what it's supposed to do. The cortisol curve will complete. Your heart will actually get its rest. That's it. That's the whole intervention. 30 feet in 30 minutes. Myth number 5, sleeping hot is just a comfort thing and it doesn't affect my health. A lot of Americans sleep warm, heavy blankets, thermostat at 72, 74, sometimes higher in the winter, or maybe a heated mattress pad. It feels cozy. It feels like being wrapped up and safe. Your cardiovascular system disagrees. Your core body temperature is supposed to drop during sleep. That temperature drop is actually a signal. It's part of what triggers deep sleep stages, including the stage where your heart rate and blood pressure reach their lowest points of the day. If your sleeping environment is too warm, your body works to regulate temperature. It increases blood flow to the skin. Your heart has to pump harder to facilitate that process. It's a subtle increase. You won't feel it, but it's real. And for people already dealing with cardiovascular stress, it's one more thing the heart is doing when it should be doing almost nothing. The research consistently points to a sleeping temperature of somewhere between 65 and 68 degrees Fahrenheit as the cardiovascular sweet spot. Most Americans sleep warmer than that, significantly warmer. Again, this isn't about any single night. It's about the accumulation. Every system I've described today stacked on top of each other, night after night, year after year, in a body that everyone, the person, the family, sometimes even the doctor, assumes is doing fine because nothing dramatic has happened yet. Nothing dramatic has happened yet. That's the most dangerous sentence in medicine. Myth number 6. I'll deal with the stress tomorrow. I just need to sleep it off. Going to bed with unresolved emotional stress, an argument you didn't finish, a work situation that's been eating at you, financial anxiety you've been pushing down all day, doesn't make the stress pause. It doesn't get filed away until morning. Your body holds it. Unresolved psychological stress at bedtime keeps the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight branch, more active than it should be during sleep. That means your heart rate stays slightly elevated, your blood pressure doesn't dip the way it should, your stress hormones don't clear. And there's a particularly dangerous pattern that researchers have identified. People who experience what's called non-dipping, meaning their blood pressure fails to drop significantly during sleep. have dramatically higher risk of cardiovascular events than people whose blood pressure follows the normal nighttime decline. Even if their daytime blood pressure readings look fine, lean in. You could go to your doctor, get your blood pressure taken at 2 in the afternoon, leave with a clean bill of health, and still be non-dipping every single night, stressing your heart in ways that a routine office visit would never catch. The habit of going to bed with unprocessed stress is not just bad for your mental health, it is a direct, measurable cardiovascular risk factor. 10 minutes of genuinely doing something with the stress before bed, writing it down, a short breathing practice, even just saying out loud what you're anxious about, changes the physiological response. It sounds soft. It sounds like wellness content, but the cardiac data behind it is real, and it's been replicated dozens of times. I want to go back to something I said at the very beginning. The majority of sudden cardiac deaths happen between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. Not because the night is uniquely dangerous, not because something mysterious happens in the dark, but because of what we do before we close our eyes. The habits that have become so routine, so normal, so unremarkable, that we'd never think to mention them to a doctor, that our families would never think to question. The glass of wine, the late snack, the phone in bed, the snoring that's always been there, the bedroom that runs too warm, the anxiety we carry under the covers and hope will dissolve by morning. None of these things feel like emergencies. That's exactly the problem. David, the man I told you about at the beginning, the one who died outside of Columbus on a Wednesday morning, he wasn't reckless. He wasn't self-destructive. He was just living the way most Americans live, the way the culture told him was fine, the way nobody ever sat him down and said, hey, the thing you're doing every single night is quietly stressing your heart in ways you can't see or feel. Nobody told him, but someone is telling you right now. And I know you might be sitting there thinking, okay, I do 3 of these things, maybe 4, and I'm fine. And that might be true. But fine so far is not the same as fine. And the changes I've described today are not dramatic. They're not expensive. They're not even hard, most of them. A cooler room, a phone charger that lives across the room, a conversation with a doctor about a sleep study, swapping the wine for something that doesn't rebound your blood pressure at 3 a.m., 10 minutes of writing before you close your eyes. That's it. That's what's standing between you and becoming a statistic in a study that someone like me reads and sits with for a very long time. I need you to do one thing before you close this video. Think of one person in your life, a husband, a father, a friend, someone you've heard snoring for years, someone you know is running on stress and bad sleep and a blood pressure cuff they haven't looked at in months. Send them this, not because it'll get me an extra view, but because the version of you that knows this now is genuinely different from the version that didn't. And the person you're thinking of right now, they deserve to know it too. Take care of your nights because your heart is working through all of them.